Hello, you are very welcome to yet another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. My name is Killian. I am co-founder at Ruby Reese and at dognutrition.ie, and I'll also, of course, be your podcast host as well. This week we've got a really interesting topic. Well, every week we have an interesting topic, don't we? But this week it is one that I feel that I've learned so much about over the last weeks and months, and it's all about fostering dogs. We've a guest speaker on. Eileen's going to come on and talk to us about a big challenge that she set for herself this year. She wanted for her 30th year on this planet to foster 30 dogs, and she's going to give us a little update of how she's getting on, what she's learned, and what she can teach us. So there's just so much to learn from the chat that I had with her. And I think it's something that we all need in our Irish dog community. You know, I think we all think it's a huge commitment, which it is, and it's hats off to anyone that's involved in the fostering community. But I think what I took from this conversation is that you can do small bits, and I think if we all, you know, rather than seeing a huge mountain to climb, maybe take on a teeny tiny task first, maybe not take on fostering 30 dogs within a year, but maybe say we might be able to do something small. So Eileen has some great ideas in the podcast, so I'm not going to take away from that. And I think without any other commentary necessary, I'm going to now invite you in to listen into the chat that we had together. Hello, Eileen. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself for anyone that might know you yet?
For sure. I'm Eileen and I am a foster home. So I usually foster for the Haven Rescue in Tipperary, but I've fostered for other groups in the past. I have about 10, 12 years experience fostering different dogs throughout my life. And recently I started my little page, Thoughtful Paws, and I just kind of promote, you know, the positive side of fostering dogs and some of the challenges, and like to spread a little bit of awareness of what's going on out there at the moment.
Yeah, it's amazing all the stuff you've done, and you gave me loads of insiders already before this chat. So I'm really excited to get into it. So one of the things that I suppose that you that stood out when we were chatting previously was that you decided to foster quite a lot of dogs this year, didn't you? Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about that first?
Yeah, so I turned 30 this year. Last October. And as you do when you get to your 30s, you kind of have a little mini crisis. I said, well, what am I really going to do? Like, what impact am I going to make this year? And I had taken a bit of a break from fostering the year before. And I thought, well, okay, I'm in with the Haven Rescue in Tipperary. What can I do that's going to make a difference for them specifically? And I decided to foster 30 dogs in my 30th year. And we are now well past 30, thankfully, with the support of the Haven, and we are on foster dog number 66.
Oh my God. Like, first of all, congratulations on setting such a big goal to start off with, because I think, like, you say it's so blasé, like we all kind of have a little crisis, but like I think some of us kind of take on maybe slightly smaller things, like I'm going to start flossing a little more often or something. Like that was a big task already, kind of a tall order, but then you went and you like more than doubled it as well already. So
I did, and I think that was only possible because of the supports that I do have and the structure of my life. So I know that's not a challenge everybody can take on. Maybe like 3 foster dogs in your 30th year might be a normal person challenge.
Yeah.
But I already had the basis of fostering dogs and a really good network to rehome dogs. So when I got in with the rescue that like I gelled with, it was just super easy for me to take dogs into my home. I restructured my whole house around dogs. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. Like there's been ups, there's been downs, there's been tears, there's been a lot of laughter. You know, it's not all plain sailing, but it has been like the best thing I've ever done, hands down. Yeah.
And I think like loads of us listening in are going to also kind of like completely understand rearranging your whole house for dogs. Like everyone that's dog crazy enough to be listening to this podcast definitely has like rugs all over the house so that, you know,
Hmm.
the dogs with joint issues aren't slipping around the place and this and that. So I think we all know about rearranging our lives anyway for our dogs, so that shouldn't be any challenge. But I love the fact that that you're not going to sugarcoat this either, and
Yeah.
you're gonna tell us a little bit about the challenges as well as of course some of the amazing benefits as well from doing this. Do you want to maybe talk about how you first got involved with the Haven Rescue first and foremost?
So maybe we'll reverse it back a little
Yeah.
bit. So I first started fostering when I was fresh out of college, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. So I was in between, you know, finishing my bachelor's and maybe starting a doctorate. And I found a rescue in West Limerick, and I managed to foster a puppy with a broken leg. And that
Oh.
was kind of like the gateway drug. So I got introduced into a world that I just didn't know existed.
Mhm.
I've always had dogs, and they've always been from kind of like a backyard bred situation where I didn't know that wasn't the norm. There were farmyard dogs. They came to our house, which was also a farmyard. In the early 90s, they lived outside, and then there was the slow transition of the dogs into our house.
Mhm.
So that was kind of my starting point. And then when I stepped into the rescue world, my eyes were kind of shot open, you know, if you say so, about 10 years ago.
Mhm.
That transitioned, that kind of moment, like caused this big transition throughout my life where I've always fostered dogs ever since that moment. I moved to the Netherlands, and I was bringing feral dogs from Spain to the Netherlands to foster in my house. And like that again, we used to set up the whole house to accommodate the dogs. So we would it was like Dexter situation.
Mhm.
So these dogs were usually completely unhandled, coming from a free running rescue where they would have 60 dogs loose in an enclosed space. So not a good situation, not like the Irish rescue situation,
Mhm.
but that challenging behavior was really interesting to me, and kind of bringing a dog back around to maybe wanting to integrate with people or at least other dogs was a really fun challenge. After COVID, I came back to Ireland, and I got really deep into rescue again just at the end of 2020.
Mhm.
And I moved to a farm, and I started setting up my life in small ways initially to accommodate rescue dogs. And I began to understand a little bit about greyhound racing and the challenges with the dogs, the surplus dogs from the greyhound racing industry. I then started to meet lurchers and the challenges that lurchers face in Ireland. And then the puppy farm dogs were brought into my awareness then soon after. So there was a lot of societal issues that were kind of brought into my awareness from 2020 to now, and I'm still learning, you know,
Mhm.
through each foster dog and through each of their stories, and kind of integrating a little bit of their story into my understanding of how Ireland actually works for dogs at the moment. So I took a little break from fostering dogs after working with one organisation, and then when we went back to it, we went back to the Haven Rescue,
Mhm.
and I was fostering dogs for them that were traveling to Sweden.
Okay.
And I fostered my first three little border collies from the pound, and we just got on great. So the Haven provided all of the equipment, all of the food, and as much knowledge as they could. And luckily, at that point, I had a lot of knowledge built up as well. And our skill set really complemented each other. So I love taking photographs of the dogs and teaching the dogs new skills and taking them out in public and doing different kind of tests. So as the foster home, you do loads of different tests to see what home that foster dog would be suitable for. So that's like a big role of the foster home.
Mhm.
So that started the ball rolling, and I started taking dogs that had stayed in the rescue for the longest time. So I had started with two Rottweilers, two brothers. So I took them one after the other, so consecutively. And it was a really good experience for me to see what the situation was in Ireland with regards to not quite semi-feral, but like unhandled backyard dogs.
Mhm.
And that was like the gateway drug into fostering for the Haven. It was really fun,
Yeah.
really, really fun. And they've got like such a rich community of people as well to interact with, that I wasn't lacking in any way for a social life, even though my whole life revolves around dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's really, really sounds amazing, and it's such a journey that you've been on. It's just like I'm brimming over with questions. um, so, um, like number one, I have to say it must be such a privilege to, you know, I know it's a huge commitment, but also a privilege to get those little glimpses into the lives of these dogs and like share a tiny little piece of their lives. I don't know how long dogs are with you on average, but I'm sure we'll get to that in a second. Maybe even yeah, we were talking previously about in our preparation for this about like expectation versus reality of fostering. So maybe that could be a good place to start getting into some of the detail.
Yeah, for sure. So I support a lot of other people on their foster journeys as
Yeah.
well. And I think a lot of people, when they get into fostering first, expect the Snow White experience.
Hmm.
They expect this immediate connection with the animal and this cute little floppy golden retriever puppy to fall into their arms and it to be a really easy rehoming experience. But the reality of rehoming dogs from rescue is often they're coming from a situation where we have a problem to solve. Maybe it's behavioral, maybe it's medical, maybe it's neither of those, but you're getting a dog from a very stressful situation. So you're getting a dog who's quite stressed, kind of high on cortisol, and that's then coming in to integrate with a family. So that transition from rescue, so whether that was puppy farm or whether that was pound, to family home can be really challenging for some dogs. And that's like the first challenge that we meet in like the fostering journey.
Hmm.
So some of those challenges that I've seen include families not really giving time for their dogs to decompress,
Hmm.
are not fully expecting. So imagine it's your first foster dog. You're actually committing to take this dog for 3 weeks, which is kind of the average length of time that you keep dog, 3 to maybe 6 weeks. And your first night, you get explosive diarrhea. That's not really part of that beautiful picture that we painted in our head of rescuing dogs. And I think that can be so overwhelming for some people. And I think it's because it hasn't actually been detailed. Like your first night with your foster dog, you might have crying. We all kind of expect a little bit of giving out at nighttime, but you might not expect chronic diarrhea or cowering. So a lot of like these fearful behaviors can come out during these huge transitions. It could be that dog's first time in a car, so we're getting vomiting. You know, there's the back of my car is what we like to call the splash zone. I
Mm.
have it completely set up for every kind of bodily fluid that could come out of a dog. And it's part of rescue, and it's you have to be practically prepared to do that when you're going to get a dog. We can all arrive with our lovely cars and put them into the back seat, but that's maybe not the reality that you should be prepared for when you're taking on a foster dog. There's a lot of practical things to think of before you even bring the dog home.
Hmm.
So that would be one of the first things. The second thing is like the behavior and the expectations of the dog when you get it home. I think it's only natural that people really want their friends, their family, their kids, everything to interact with this lovely little animal that they brought home, and they feel so proud that they're part of its like rescue story. But decompression is going to be like a huge element in bringing this dog into your house and having like a successful foster situation. I'm sure you've had loads of people on here talking about decompression in the past.
Absolutely, in different ways, but I think like I think anytime we talk about any subject, it kind of just reveals another kind of layer to that onion. So absolutely makes total sense. And I think what really resonated with me there was you were talking about the car journeys, and it might be their first car journey, but even something, and it kind of unlocked a memory for me a little bit that that someone mentioned in the past. We were talking about adopting ex-racing greyhounds,
Mhm.
and they brought up a mind-blowing fact for me at the time was that like most of these dogs have never seen stairs in their life. They don't understand how to go up and down stairs. So
Mhm.
and of course we all make kind of exemptions for puppies because we know that they are learning about the world, but like you mentioned, you know,
Yeah,
foster
we have
dogs have
a
so
good
many
health.
new
get on with it, don't we?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. They're older now. They should
yeah.
they should have
So
got this.
fears are one thing, and
Mm,
then something else that I've noticed is a really common trend is a fear of crossing boundaries. So doors. Most of these dogs are outdoor dogs that are being brought into an inside situation. That like so we've got doors, then we've got floors. The surfaces are a huge thing as well for greyhounds and for any other foster dog. They wouldn't have stepped on tile before. It's a really overwhelming experience. I'm sure we've all had that little slip even on laminate flooring,
yeah.
you know, when wet wet feet, you know. So that is like that sensory experience of coming into a house, from the smell of cleaning products to the flooring, the textures, the noises, the sound of the kettle dinging, the washing machine. It's like a whole sensory explosion for a rescue dog coming into a house, especially if they've been in a rescue centre for a long time. So rescue centres are fantastically predictable places. Say what you like, maybe that's not what you imagine a dog should live like, but they are for a dog, which is a creature of habit, a fantastically predictable place. Dinner comes at the same time, cleaning comes at the same time, exercise comes at the same time, the surfaces never change, there's no unusual noises bar what they'll get used to, which is the power hose, the brush, and cars pulling. They're wonderfully predictable. So when we bring them into our houses, suddenly there's a lot more fine detail for them to get used to. And that can be really challenging. Some dogs take it in their stride, and it is wonderful when that happens. You feel like you're really onto a winner. I call them like the easy dogs, you know, where you don't have to desensitize them to new things. But sometimes you really have to go slow and break down what you thought was a really simple experience to being a much more like bigger mountain to climb for your rescue dog. Yeah. So like the greyhounds on the stairs, it could be grass for a puppy farm dog. They could never have stepped on grass before, and you're slowly trying to lure them out with little pieces of food and tasty bits and encourage normal behaviours for these dogs. So that's why I kind of brought up not desensitization, but decompression. So I might just show you some of the bits that I have for decompression when dogs come into our house and what our decompression protocol usually is.
Yeah.
So when a foster dog comes into my house, I really like to start off with low handling situations. And that is kind of opposite to what most people want to do. And it's opposite to what I want to do. I really want to be hands-on with that dog and, you know, giving me his first bath. That's like, even though you're thinking that way, you need to say, okay, if I was kidnapped from a situation that I knew, the last thing I want is a strange woman putting her hands all over me and potentially putting me into a bath.
Yeah.
Last thing. The dogs think pretty much similarly to us in terms of strangers. So I've got what we all have, I think, in our houses. We've got all the puzzles and Kongs and things like that. So I'll always have a frozen Kong when a dog comes home. So we go, the dog comes into my house. Nobody is to touch that dog. It doesn't get a huge amount of interaction from my own dogs at that moment. We generally take dogs from the haven and they've been crate trained before that. So we go into a crate, we've a dark room, a quiet room, and we give a frozen Kong, or we give something like peanut butter and a licking mat. So those behaviours are calming behaviours. Licking, chewing are the other thing that I really like to use, and fosters quite like it because they wouldn't have had any high value foods while they were in foster, is long lasting chews. So we use pizzles, or we use like lamb tendons, beef tendons, everything that you can think of. I have here as well. For the smaller dogs, I use rabbit ears. Yeah. And yeah, so luckily I'm talking to a pro in all of those things.
I don't know about a pro, but we love a bit of enrichment, and of course it is so many different kind of, you know, uses in a dog's life, especially these type of enrichments where, like, you know, you've mentioned Kongs, you've mentioned licky mats and things like that. Like, obviously, even the physiological licking, we know that calms dogs down. That's an activity that kind of starts their calming down process. So
yeah, so that's where we begin with fosters, is like, we're going to start the positive associations inside. And we're going to start that coming down from that
Slow.
real high
Yeah.
spike of cortisol that they've been looking at the dogs. Maybe the kennels have been facing each other, so they've been looking at the dogs directly in the eyes. They're coming down from really high, stressful, energetic situations. And that car ride home, I'm sure, was a big challenge. So things like that really, really help. And we're so lucky that like people are now beginning to donate those kind of things to rescues. Or even when people, I can see a lot of people online when they adopt a dog, the adoption boxes are coming in, and they have a lot of that decompression things inside them, which is really useful. So I don't usually bring out the snuffle mat and the smelling till the following day.
Yeah.
So my first day is usually like chewing, licking, dark, sleep. And we're prioritizing sleep in that real early phase.
Yeah.
And then we're introducing the dog to the household dogs, bringing a better socialization in. And the walks, then I use the next piece of kit that I love as a foster home is my 5-meter line. I start the sniffy walks then. I use the 5-meter line on the next piece of kit. Fostering, it has a lot of pieces to it that can be really, really helpful. So I use this. This is an anti-escape 3-point harness. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with these for greyhounds, but they're fantastic for most dogs.
Yeah.
And I like to use that in the beginning, maybe with a martingale collar, which like this. So a martingale collar has a sliding loop and it closes around a dog's neck to prevent them backing out of the collar. So my nightmare getting a new foster dog, thankfully this has never happened, but I'm sure it has happened to plenty of other people, is I'm escaping.
Yeah.
So we kind of set up that first walk for success. We've got the long line to kind of prevent that hitting the end of the line. We want them to feel a little bit of autonomy. We've taken so much autonomy away from these dogs that a lot of that beginning couple of days is about how can I provide a little bit of autonomy for you to feel comfortable again. So sniffy walks, the sniffari, then we'll use snuffle mat inside for your breakfast. And I use the tractive as well. So we've got 2 of these that if I'm taking a foster dog out down the fields, I'm popping on attractive just for my own comfort. Thankfully, I've never had to search for a dog using one. But yeah, that's the first couple of days will be all about lowering that cortisol level and having a nice integration into the house. Yeah.
I love that you're like slowing down the speed, giving them a little bit of autonomy, making them kind of ease into it. It sounds like a really, really nice process. And like you say, probably not the one that the fairy tale kind of thinks of where you get your bundle of joy little puppy home, like in the Andrex ads and that side of things, but it equally sounds like actually a lot more of a nice experience in another way.
It is lovely, yeah. And look, all dogs are different and there's no recipe for fostering. Some people find that launching into the normal habit of things works for them. I prefer to kind of go with like a harm mitigating route. So even if this is the slower way to do it, it's the safer way to do it for me personally. We do general introductions. So you can launch into your normal routine. I personally like to go a slower way.
Yeah, and you are building them up for like, you know, a huge transition anyway, and for success in the future. So it's like you're kind of laying great foundations here by slowing things down as well. And yeah, so that's the first couple of days, and you're expecting then to have these for kind of like a couple of weeks.
Yeah, usually a couple of weeks, and during that time, like you have to be goal orientated. So the goal is the dog needs to find its forever home, and that you need to free up your home for the next foster dog, ideally. You need to keep that at the forefront of your brain. So a lot of people tell me, oh, I could never foster a dog because I will fall in love. And I say, well, do you know what? If you don't foster that dog, the reality is that the rescue system clogs up. And maybe you need to accept that we have to be uncomfortable sometimes in life to benefit our community. Yeah. No community moves forward without you saying, okay, I can tolerate a little bit of discomfort in my own life to facilitate the life of another creature. And like there is discomfort in fostering. And I think that's important to acknowledge, that it's okay to be uncomfortable. It is really okay to be uncomfortable and to do something that's valuable.
Mhm.
So many people are resistant to doing hard things. And it's kind of the hard things that build us as people and build us as dog owners and build us as advocates for the rescue community as well. It's totally all right to feel sad when your foster dog goes, and it's totally okay to feel like, oh, maybe I wish I kept that one, but you're serving a greater purpose eventually, for the rescue system. And while we wish we could eradicate the problem of needing rescues, and that is what we would love to do, it's not the reality at the moment.
Yeah.
And it's okay to be uncomfortable and to foster and to experience joy and sadness and success and failure all together.
Mhm.
It will bring a spectrum of emotions, and that's fine. That's fine. And you have to accept that's part of being a human being and being a compassionate human being. So many of us just want the positive stuff. Oh, I could never do that because my dog is, he takes 3 days to really accept another dog. Well, okay, maybe we separate them. You can have a bathroom dog.
Mhm.
Maybe there's a puppy who needs medical attention. I have many, many a times kept a dog with mange in my toilet,
Mhm.
and they can't be mixed at a rescue center, and they can't be mixed at your home, and that's how that's going to function for them. So there is a type of rescue for every home. There is also the wrong fit, and that's important to acknowledge too. And I think the rescue centers will guide you on what will work best for you, but there is help available to choose what foster you bring home as well.
And I suppose it's a terrible question in its own right, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Um, like, say someone's sitting here now and they're thinking, God, I really would like to try my hand at this. Like, is it okay to go along and speak to a rescue and say, listen, this is my first rodeo. Can you give
Mm-hmm.
me an easy one? I'm willing to wait for an easy one that you think is going to suit. I know it won't be perfect, but is that okay? And is it okay to say I'm really dipping my toe in here?
Yeah, I think it's okay to go forward and say that, but
Mhm.
also sometimes we think we are getting an easy dog
Yeah.
and it doesn't end up being as easy as we expect. That is okay. It is okay to say, you know what would suit me best right now is if you have a senior dog that I can help you with and rehome. It's also okay to say, I've got 3 weeks. I've got this date to this date. I can hold a dog for only 3 weeks and no longer. And I think that's maybe a good way to start off as well, is say, I have this specific amount of time that I can offer you. Do you have something that I can take into my home that will say your basic requirements? So if you have kids, cats, or other dogs, there's three of the main things that a rescue will look at when they're looking to place a foster. So, and we're also looking at a family. We'll say your suitability. Will you follow the instructions that a rescue is giving you? Shockingly, people are terrible, terrible at following instructions, and that's all right. But you have to consider like the safety of your family and the other pets too.
Mhm.
So the rescue will do a lot of like the pruning out of dogs that won't fit that environment, because they ultimately, a rescue wants dogs to be in foster home, but they also want the foster home to succeed.
Yeah.
So they will try their level best with this limited time and resources that they have to make the right match. And sometimes people hit the rescue at the wrong time, and maybe you're not getting the perfect answer. People expect a certain level of customer service from people who are volunteering for free. And I think sometimes they can be a little bit surprised when the answers coming back from most rescue centres are very brief and very blunt.
Mhm.
I think you need to prepare yourself for that too. That you're looking for customer service, which is kind of a funny thing when you're looking for that from volunteers who are a little bit jaded,
Yeah.
and like compassion fatigue is a real thing in rescues. So compassion fatigue is where you genuinely go a little bit numb from how much caring and advocating that you've done for these animals. So a lot of people are a little bit fatigued, and you might not be getting them at their best self when you're asking these questions, particularly late at night, which is when we all get on Facebook and send out questions. So I do think there's an element of the foster homes being realistic, being prepared, and knowing who they're talking to. But also, I think it's a great way to go have a mindset of, this is what I'm capable of, this is the situation that I'm living in, and I need to be realistic. So once those come together, I think you get a really good match. Like, I know who I'm talking to, but also this is my living situation, and I have to be realistic.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, in another sense, you're nearly doing a rescue a favor by kind of pointing out your limitations, because A, they don't have to go looking for them, and B, I suppose they probably use way more resources bailing someone out, and it happens, and I'm sure it's normal kind of day to day of kind of becomes part and parcel of doing this. But in another sense, it would be great if, like you say, if these things just worked out for the couple of weeks.
And like, honest mistakes can happen, and accidents happen, and dogs fight, and the cats maybe suddenly won't get on with the dog, and there's loads of different things that can happen. Or like me, I have fostered hundreds and hundreds of dogs over the years, and this year I had to send back a foster dog. Why? Because I discovered I was allergic to Vishlas. And
wow.
And I foster all the time, so things happen. Now we do, as rescues, we get the suite of excuses, that are standard. But for the most part, if it's a genuine problem, you will get a genuine solution.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? Like, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there as well by kind of saying, if you let a rescue know what you're capable of, and even that time limit, because we're all the people listening in that have considered fostering in the past, and I've certainly considered it with Chris in the past as well. You kind of think about the best case scenario, and you say, I want to be able to foster a dog forever and ever until they find their forever and ever home. But that's not possible because of all of these reasons and all of these events I've got coming up. Like, you've just quashed that excuse that we all have, really, by saying, okay, I've got 3 weeks, or I've got 4 weeks, or I've got the summer holidays, or I've got whatever amount of time it is, and you put a limit on it, and
I think that's a really nice way to start as well, because if it is successful, you can say, well, maybe we can do a couple more weeks, and then if it's not successful, you can say goodbye. I haven't loved every dog that I've fostered. And I think that surprises some people. Dogs are much like people, and you find animals that you click with, you find specific breed groups that you click with, and then you find others that you really don't. And that's completely all right. And I think that time limitation, or being able to commit a certain chunk of time, the end is in sight when you're fostering. Sometimes the dog isn't the perfect match for your life, but you still want to foster and do the good thing. And it's really important in that situation to be realistic, for sure.
Definitely. And that gives us all a lot of food for thought now as well. And then talking about moving on to kind of, hopefully a dog finding their forever home. Do you help out in any way, or do you influence kind of how these dogs then move on to in their adoption process as well?
So I'm really lucky, because I find that the hardest part is like choosing who is to go with somebody that you find, like a little animal that you formed a huge attachment with. So the Haven, for me, take over all of the rehoming responsibilities. I'm only responsible for providing a certain level of information. So I provide the home, like the testing. So we'll say, can it get into a car? Do you think it would work in a camper van? Because there's lots of questions that you would have as a home. Does this dog get on with cats? Oh, I've got 2 horses. Do you think you could walk past a horse with no problem? Hey, do you know if it likes water? We kayak a lot. So I'll do all this kind of wacky testing, and I bring into the cities. Hey, we go for pints on Friday, and everybody else brings their dog, but I really want a dog that can go for pints. Do you think Paddy, the Jack Russell, can go for pints? Okay, well, my job next Friday is going to be going for pints with Paddy the Jack Russell.
Yeah.
So, that's my responsibility in rehoming. And the other responsibility a foster home would have in rehoming is photographs and videos. visibility of dogs saves lives.
Yeah.
Taking good photographs saves lives. I know foster homes sometimes struggle with this as a skill, but it is something that I've actually created a handbook on this if anybody wants it for photographing foster dogs. But being able to see that animal and its true personality come out, that's what's going to save that dog's life in a rescue centre, and that's what's going to reduce the amount of time that that dog is at a rescue centre. So it's a huge skill to be able to have, but also can be developed over time, and other people can help you. Photographing that dog in the situations that we described, whether it's at the pub, whether it's at the park, after all this decompression is done, we're then launching into real life. That dog needs to live with us and live in situations that we feel like it's going to thrive in. I'm not going to throw a dog into a situation I feel like it's going to fail at, but I am going to kind of surf that borderline of where's too far and where's just right. So if I have a shy border collie, I'm not going to start at the pub. I'm going to start at the park and say, oh, actually, this is okay. Maybe we'll swing by for a pup cup and see how that goes. But if I've got a really social greyhound that I know instantly within that first couple of moments of meeting it that it's really like sociable, I know I'll be able to do my home testing or my trial runs of real life out in public and get those videos and those photographs. There's some photographs that do really well and some not, and you learn as a foster home what's going to do well. Just so many bizarre things. For example, if you put your foster dog into pink collars, pink harnesses, pink bandanas, they're more likely to get adopted. So there's a really interesting psychology to photographing the foster dogs to show their best side as well.
It's insane what a kind of lesson in psychology all of this is, and speaking about dogs in general and the whole dog community, it's just wild to think about it. And
those perceptions of animals change under nearly every circumstance known to man. It's a really funny one, like that a little bow in a dog's hair could be the difference between it getting left in a rescue centre and adopted. Yeah, and that has nothing to do with the dog itself. A lot of these animals are perfect. A lot of people think, oh, I'm getting a second-hand dog with issues if I take it from a rescue centre. But a lot of these dogs are perfect. They just didn't fit into somebody else's idea of perfect.
Yeah,
but
that makes total sense. And talking about putting bows in hair and things like that, do you have any interesting transformation stories or glow ups that have occurred over the last while that really stand out?
I do. So a lot of you will see on my story that I have a lurcher called Promise, and Promise came to me from Dublin County Pound. With the support of the Haven. So I saw her on the page and I knew instantly, I was like, okay, I don't care what I'm doing, but I need to drop everything and drive up and get her. And with the support of the Haven, thankfully, Rosie and Jenny are spectacular. There's 2 girls that run that, by the way, and they nearly do everything themselves. So I was able to go up to Dublin and get her, and she was completely hairless, covered in mange. She had wounds all over her face. Her gums were inflamed. Actually, her gums were inflamed because she was scratching her face so much. She'd get her foot in her mouth and continue scratching because she couldn't tell where that itch was coming from. So mange is a little mite that lives under the skin, and it creates little intricate burrows under the skin. And it's just like woefully itchy. So because she had mange for so long, she had developed secondary skin infections. She had recently given birth and was full of milk, and we were really worried about her getting mastitis. And then soon after that, so she was with me about a week, and we saw the really early signs of a pyometra, which is an infected womb. So she couldn't be neutered because she was full of milk, and she couldn't treat the pyometra in the traditional way, which would be just to take out the womb, because we can't cut into her. And it was kind of a catch-22. So she'd been on antibiotics, and luckily we got everything under control, and she is like a different dog now. She has dinosaur pajamas on, her hair is coming back on her face, the infection's gone, that real rancid smell of yeast and skin infection is gone, thankfully. And she's actually the dog that I was talking about that was living in my bathroom. So she was in isolation in my house. all we could do with her, because she couldn't mix with other dogs and she couldn't contaminate other areas that dogs would be in, into the house, out of the house. Did her pee, she did her business, and she went back into her crate in the bathroom, and she just slept. All she wanted to do for the first 3 weeks, we're in the end of week 3 now, she just slept. And then the last 2 days, she started doing zoomies in the garden. And
That must be
honestly, I
so
think,
rewarding.
oh, it's so good. That's what makes fostering addictive, is when you know that you've made this incredible difference. And there's so many people that want to make that difference and think that it's like this huge mountain to climb. For Promise, all it took was was a bathroom and a little bit of medication and patience.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of washing and things like that, but she couldn't go anywhere. She couldn't do anything. So that would suit some people's lifestyles. It just depends on, you know, your willingness to overcome some of the hurdles in your own life to be able to facilitate an animal like that.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people need, is that little bit of just confidence that they could make, you know, a huge difference in a really short amount of time, if they just kind of believed in the fact that
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's a really interesting thing to bring up, because you don't have to be an extremely knowledgeable person to foster. You don't have to have a huge amount of experience. All you have to do is have a willingness to learn and pay attention to the animal that's in your home. It's not a huge skill set. It's just, the desire. Once you have that desire, it becomes really easy to foster. All you need is that little spark to want to do a little bit of good.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. We briefly interrupt this podcast to bring you a message from our dear sponsors, ourselves at dognutrition.ie. If your dog, or indeed one of your friends, families or clients' dogs, is struggling with allergies, itching, weight problems, or their gut health in general, consider getting in touch with dognutrition.ie for a free discovery call. We also work with lots of healthy dogs on fine-tuning diets and helping their families navigate the myriad of supplement, food and treat options out there. Thank you for your attention. Now it's back to the podcast. And we spoke a little bit about pink already. Now I want to talk about another colour. You brought up previously when we were preparing for this about black dog syndrome. What is black dog syndrome?
This is my favourite psychological topic in dog rescue. So black dog syndrome is where black dogs continually get passed over in rescues. People don't want black dogs, and it's really it's a universal phenomenon across the whole world, everywhere except for Sweden and Sweden, Denmark, and some of the other snowy countries. So when we start to think about that, we begin to realize why. Black dogs don't photograph well. They're associated as well with depression. So you've got the black dog in Ireland meant you had depression. They're associated in other countries with being guard dogs, with being attack dogs, with just like a lot of social connotations to being aggressive. So when you see a black dog in a rescue centre, you're more likely to have your eye drawn towards the golden dog or the fawn dog or the white dog, simply just because of looks. So we see it in litters particularly. So if we have a litter of Cocker Spaniels, the party coloured ones, so the blues and the spotty ones, they'll go first. Then you'll get your solid colours, so your reds and your golds and your fawns, they'll go next. And the ones that will always be last will be the black dogs.
Really? Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah, and it's really consistent. And I think the black dogs that suffer the most would be the black lurchers in Ireland. Lurchers, I guess visually, they don't feel what we think is a cuddly, cutesy dog. A lot of people have come up to me, like out and about, oh, he seems really nice, but I couldn't have a dog that looks like that. You know, I couldn't have the dog that shape. it's not dog shaped enough for some people. So black lurchers really suffer from black dog syndrome because they don't have the looks, they don't have the shape, they don't have the floppy ears, but they are these fabulous, cuddly, fantastic dogs. We see it with greyhounds all the time. So you could have 10 greyhounds there. The most social, the most happy, the most lovely ones would be the black ones, but they would rather choose a dog potentially with a behavioural problem if it's blue. So the blue is like in every breed is the most popular. Blues and merles. And even if those dogs have issues, people would rather choose the dog with that was more difficult to manage than the social, happy black dog.
That is crazy.
Yeah, I think as we've lived our lives online a little bit more, that becomes even more obvious. You know, we see a lot of breeding now for the silver labs or Merle dachshunds, Merle Frenchies, anything that like is visually interesting. So coat color is now like associated with status, and these black dogs are kind of getting forgotten about. So Labradors always started off as being a black dog, and now they've nearly completely transitioned as a breed standard to being gold. And that was never what was actually expected of a Labrador. They were usually all black, and it was really unusual to have a gold dog, and it wasn't part of the breed standard until very recently. So we're seeing this huge societal transition away from black dogs.
Okay, so we need to stand up for the black dogs a little bit more.
Absolutely. And maybe when you're adopting, to put some of the notions about the shape of the dog or the color of the dog out of your mind and put forward your needs first. So what do you need personally in your dog? Like, what does your dog do for your life? What kind of role do you see a dog filling in your life, instead of looking at the aesthetic side of what is my dog going to be like?
And like 9 times out of 10, spend longer than 5 minutes with any sighthound and you're likely to fall in love. Like, I mean, they're just like the nicest dogs ever.
Gentlest dogs.
Yeah, we didn't have a lot to do with or we hadn't met so many greyhounds or so many lurchers to be able to talk about it before starting off Ruby Reese. And now that we've done loads and loads of things in the dog world, we've just met like probably hundreds of sighthounds now that are just like, each and every one of them kind of like steals a little piece of me, I think. There and like that takes into account like the whippets and the lurchers as well as the greyhounds. You know, they're just they're all fantastic in their own ways.
Yeah, they are. They really are.
Yeah, and we have so many of them that need
I think that's its own conversation. Ireland is in a lurcher crisis. Why? Because breeding is unregulated. There's very little laws surrounding it, and the communities where lurchers are coming from are also unpoliced. So we have this huge problem with animal abuse and these dogs just being dropped off in areas when they're no longer useful. Maybe they're not good at hunting rabbits. Maybe they have hurt their toes. Toes in particular for sighthounds can be a big issue because their bones are so fine and they move at such speeds that their little toes can crack, which is really solvable, really solvable. But they're discarded as hunting objects when they no longer serve their purpose. And we're flooded with lurchers. Every pound in Ireland has the same issue with lurchers. More so nearly than any other breed. Lurchers, bull lurchers, Salukis, whippet mixes, everything and anything mixed with a sighthound is flooding the Irish rescue system. So I think that's why we're seeing so many in rescue homes, because we're really lucky that the Irish people begin to acknowledge the need that these need to come into our homes and how absolutely fantastic they are when they are in our homes. They sleep a lot. They don't eat a huge amount. They're really neat and tidy. They don't want to pee if it's raining. You know, it's really interesting that there is a slight response to the lurcher crisis, but it's not tackling it at its root. And I think the only way to tackle something like that at its root is through policy and lawmaking.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I think everyone that's spent long enough in this community has come to the realization that that we're not going to adapt ourselves out of crisis. It helps alleviate things. It'll always be a need, but it's not the only way to the solution, and it's not, yeah, it's not going to work
Yeah,
on
it's
its
not a
own.
long-term solution. So I've been involved a lot with international rescue and sending dogs abroad.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes people frown on it. They're like, oh, Irish dogs should be adopted in Ireland. And the reality is, even if we send them to every other country in the world, it would be like emptying the ocean with a teaspoon.
Hmm.
Um, People don't understand how many dogs there actually is in
Yeah.
Ireland. I think that's because the rescues are doing such a fantastic job at buffering the problem. They're
Hmm.
absorbing these dogs and sending them to the UK and sending them to Sweden and sending them to Germany and the Czech Republic and everywhere else we're sending dogs at the moment, trying to bail out this flood of dogs that's come after COVID. And
Hmm.
a lot of these are post-COVID puppies. They're people who haven't realized that, breeding your dogs isn't the financial endeavor it was in 2020. It's coming from all angles at the moment, and there seems to be no end in sight, and there's also very little interest in policymakers doing something about it.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a conundrum for sure, and yeah, it's something that we do need to see huge change in. There is another episode, so anyone that is listening to this one and wants to hear all about legislation, we you can go back and listen to the last episode once you finish this one. Um, so yes, our, we were talking about sighthounds and got completely sidetracked. That was my fault. But yeah, absolutely. And I think one point that you made as well, kind of just was very interesting, is that a lot of lurchers are kind of set aside or enter the kind of rescue system because they don't have a high prey drive. They don't like chasing small animals. Isn't that just the most fantastic kind of characteristic to have for a home with small kids, with cats, with some other small dogs, with bunny rabbits, whatever it is? Like, that's, you're going in the right direction already for so many homes, aren't you? With that specific characteristic, it's insane.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And look, all dogs are individuals, and I
yeah,
think
yeah, yeah.
the way we've marketed greyhounds and sighthounds often is they all need to be on a leash, they all need to be muzzled, they all need to be. I think maybe the conversation needs to shift a little bit and say all dogs are individuals.
Hmm.
While they may have some specific breed traits, the reality is they will have their own traits as
Yeah.
individuals. Sometimes dogs within breed groups are so different to each other, they could be as different to dogs in other groups. So there was a study done recently that showed that a working collie is nearly a different breed to a show collie, or a
Hmm.
working line Labrador is nearly like a different breed to a show line Labrador in terms of the expressions of the behaviours. And that's really interesting because I think we're seeing that in the populations of sighthounds and things and the dogs coming to rescue. So, speaking of working dogs, a lot
Hmm.
of people are getting a lot of working line Labradors, a lot of working line Cockers, and a lot of working line Springers, and they're expecting them to live in their homes with their small children. And it's becoming really challenging. Like, those dogs are unfulfilled. They're genetically unfulfilled in their homes.
Hmm.
And it's a really difficult conversation to have with people because they said, well, we always had insert whatever breed here, and they were never like this. Well, they were never as finely bred as the ones that you're getting. We
Hmm.
always had a German Shepherd, so we bought a Mallee. Well, you've never had a dog like a Mallee, is the reality. They're so genetically different now to how they used to be that we're getting a lot of different drives. And those dogs are coming in, and the majority of them are not suited to Irish homes, is the
Hmm.
reality. So we're lucky in the Haven that we have an outlet to Sweden where they do want high drive dogs for a lot of hiking, a lot of outdoor benches. They live differently to us. But where do we put these dogs after they're bred? Like, where do these high drive dogs go? Where do the staffies that are bred to run up 8 foot walls go? And they are being bred for that. There's a lot of sports out there that are encouraging breeding, but maybe are not responsibly homing.
Hmm. Yeah.
And while it's fantastic what these dogs are capable of, we also have to be really cognizant of the general public getting their hands on animals that are essentially weapons. Um, no one likes to think of their animal as a predator, like a predator living in your own house. But that's what dogs are. They're predators and they are scavengers, and we have domesticated them to an extent, but they are still a separate species to us, and we can't expect them to behave like humans. So a lot of animals that are coming into rescue are coming in because the expectation set by their owners was so high, and that a dog, an animal, could never reach the standard that they were expecting. Maybe they were expecting their dog to be their baby or their child, but dogs can never be children. And like that's, while I might call my dogs my children,
Yeah.
they can never be children, and they can never act like children. They have their own specific species, specific needs that need to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And rescue centres are seeing a lot of disappointed, loving homes just who were completely ill prepared for the actual reality of owning a dog.
Yeah, they should have got a Tamagotchi or something instead of an actual dog.
Homes that wanted dogs, realistically, they wanted cats. You know, they wanted something to live in their house, exist independently. You put food down, you put water down, and you enjoy its company, rather than a dog that they need to take out and fulfill like the prey drives, the chase, the bite, the whole predation sequence is like an innate desire for a dog that we can fulfill and that we need to fulfill, and that like engagement that the dog wants to have with us is so unique. We need to fulfill that for dogs to be happy, but I think the education about dogs hasn't reached the general public just yet.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. Like, I mean, I'd love to have so many of the breeds you mentioned. Like, huskies are beautiful dogs as well. But like, I mean, listen, if I was Roz Purcell, I'd probably have a dog like that because she's up a mountain every single day. That's great, but like, I'm not. And even like keeping on top of the energy needs of our Frenchie is enough for us, you know. And she gets a decent walk every day, rain, hail or shine, and that's just what we're prepared to do. But I'm not prepared to go and you know, keep O'Malley entertained 24 hours a day, literally.
And I think there is a dog for everybody. Like there is something out there in a rescue centre that will fit your lifestyle, and it just didn't fit somebody else's. And that's the reality of how it works now. But yeah, breeding these specific dogs for the specific needs maybe doesn't need to happen. Like as we're doing it, the dogs for jobs need is gone. You know, it's more like human ego now we're fulfilling with breeding rather than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, look, I do appreciate a good, ethical and genetically sound breeder, and I really think that's admirable in its own way. And I don't think if you are a properly sound breeder, I don't think generally they contribute to rescue centres that much. Now, do I know? I don't have statistics on that. I don't think anybody does. But it's the backyard breeders, the puppy farmers, and where the greyhound racing industry, the coursing industry, and the lurchers, I think, that are contributing most heavily to rescue centres. But finding dogs that suit your needs is like the most important part. I think you've got to be really self-aware, like, to find a dog that suits your needs. You know, when I started looking for a dog for myself, I became acutely aware of what I needed and the level of engagement that I wanted. I want a dog to live under my skin, you know? And some dogs just don't have that kind of personality. So it's really interesting to know yourself first, and then to find a dog that will suit the personality that you have.
Definitely. Yeah. And do you think fostering maybe could be, and this is a little bit off tangent, but do you think fostering could be a good way of almost figuring out what type of dog that you've had? So I'm sure there's loads of people that have had dogs when they were growing up, and then they went and lived their city life, and now they're thinking about like, okay, maybe I want to start having more adult life again now, and you know, that more kind of like family style, and I'm thinking about getting a dog. Would fostering potentially expose them then to different breeds, different kind of, you know, individuals, so that they can kind of hone in on maybe what they might like to adopt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think doing it that way it's an interesting take, and maybe you have to be very clear with the rescue centre that that's something that you're interested in doing. It's a little bit challenging to do it that way because when there's like inconsistent fosters, okay, now I've adopted my dog, goodbye. It can be a little bit hard for rescue centres to like, who've now counted on that as, okay, now we have the capacity for 30 dogs. Okay, well, actually now it's only 29. So it's really important to be transparent. But yes, I definitely think it's a good way to get experience of lots of different breeds, lots of different age groups. Age groups, I think, is a really interesting one. So not everybody loves puppies. And
No.
I'm the first to put my hand up and say, I don't love living with puppies. They're like a completely different animal to an adult dog. So I think fostering, you foster some puppies, foster some adults, foster some seniors, foster some sighthounds, foster some gun dogs. I think if you can get a good spread of what is out there and what those breeds are like and what those individuals are like, eventually you will kind of have a good idea of, okay, I think we're going down the route of maybe you're creating a personality profile rather than a breed specific profile. So you say, hey, I would like maybe something over 2 because I can't take any of more of my shoes being destroyed.
Yeah.
And we're going to go for maybe a sighthound because I like these traits. So you're creating like a little personality profile of the dog that you maybe would like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing, and I think it's really, really interesting, and so funny as well that a friend of mine recently was puppy sitting for a weekend and was like, Killian, I hate puppies. I just realized I hate puppies because it was in a very bitey, scratchy, play with me kind of phase. So I think a lot of us like to forget that exists once our dogs get out of puppyhood, but like it's a beautiful time, but it's definitely full on. So yeah, I can totally get it.
So challenging.
Yeah.
It is so challenging, and they take in everything, and you have to be so careful about what they're learning during that period of time because that comes back to bite you in the ass.
Literally sometimes.
When you develop into adults. So it's really interesting to find out what age group suits you. And I think that's something that I had never considered before I went into the fostering world. I always thought, the model was you get a partner, you get a house, you get a dog, and you get the dog as a puppy. And you start off with an 8-week-old puppy and you grow with it. But now I'm beginning to realize there's a lot more you can get from a dog that's 2 and you know how it is. So you know a lot more information about how that dog has developed at the age of 2 than you do when that dog is 8 weeks old. So many of these traits, while we can do load for exposing that dog to different environments and desensitizing and habituating the dog to lots of different environments, the reality is genetics has a huge role in how a dog turns out. And a lot of us like to say it's all how you raise them. It's a lot of how you raise them, but the genetics of the dog matters. And finding a fit of a dog who has the same genetic interests that you have is a big part of the success.
Yeah, exactly. It's finding that Netflix and vegging out on the sofa gene. That's the important one.
Absolutely.
And you also wanted to talk a little bit about ways to support rescues beyond adopting. So what can people do? You mentioned already, like obviously photography. If anyone's a good photographer, they might use those skills to help out some of the rescues as well. But what other ways to support rescues?
It's honestly, it's limitless. Yeah. So you can get as creative with this as you like, from coffee mornings. So the first thing that is really challenging for rescues is money. They need money. The average rescue, I'm sure, in Ireland has veterinary bills every month of in excess of €20,000. That's neutering, spaying, vaccinating, and that doesn't even include the other things that are mandatory in a rescue centre, like worming, defleeing, shampoo, the water bill, the electricity bill, the Dettol that's used on the floor, the types of cleaners that have to be used to clean out the bowls. Everything costs money. And the first thing that you can always think about is, how can I raise money, or how can I donate money here? Standing orders, always welcome. Send them to the Haven. Their details are on their Facebook and Instagram. But also to to create like staff mornings or engage your community in rescue. So you never know whose life you're going to touch by engaging your community. Sometimes maybe you could organize a fun run. You don't have to organize it with the rescue. You can support the rescue and then send the money. Rescues have so much to be doing that they can't go to every single event. But if you can organize something independently, that's so welcome. It's so welcome. The next thing you can do is volunteer. Everybody's welcome to come. It'll be cleaning, painting, scrubbing, walking dogs, cleaning runs, and everybody is welcome to join. So there's volunteering. You can offer to pick up dogs and drop off dogs. So maybe you're not in a position to have a foster dog, but one of the biggest challenges in rescues is actually transporting dogs from A to B, from the pound to the vet, from the vet to the rescue centre. And if you can do that, if you've got a car and if you have 5 spare hours in the evening, you could be a huge help to a rescue centre and give them an evening where they can get on top of the other things like the paperwork, the microchipping, the 100 other jobs, like replying to Facebook messages. There's so many little invisible jobs in rescue that kind of go unnoticed. And being able to drive dogs from A to B takes a huge chunk of time out for people in rescue centres. The next thing you can do is volunteer for walking. A lot of rescue centres do walking on Saturdays, so always welcome. That's a great time to take photographs. That's a great time that we can learn a little bit more about the dogs and what they're like and what they don't like. You can share posts. So, as I said, visibility saves lives. Visibility saves lives. To want a rescue dog, you need to see that dog in the first place. To see that dog now, we mostly need social media. We need it to be on stories. We need it to be on your page. We need it to be shared multiple times. If that dog is still staying in rescue centres and you have a vested interest in that dog getting into a home, share it. I've seen a lot of businesses, what they're doing now is dog of the month for their chosen rescue. So maybe they've got 1 or 2 rescues that they support. They'll do dog of the month. And that has gotten so many of our dogs adopted. Just from one little post, maybe it took them 35 seconds. They said, oh, could you send me a picture of Paddy and a description? And next thing you know, we've got 4 applications, even though he's had none for the last 3 months. And those things really matter. Like, it's such a small thing to be able to share a post, and it has a huge lasting impact.
Yeah.
The next things we could do are buy food and long-lasting treats. They're really valuable in rescue centres, mainly for a little bit of silence. So if we have a dog who's barking and is distressed, if we can get them engaged with a long-lasting treat like a cow hoof or pizzles or everything else in between, it can just bring that dog down a little bit and open up a little window to connecting with that dog. So they're really valuable for rescues. If you've got if you're involved in a large company like Apple, there is a charity. There's like charity routes where they get tax relief and they donate money to different rescue centres. So if you could put forward your local rescue centre for one of these big tech company charitable donations, it would be fantastic. And I'm sure there's every rescue in Ireland will welcome it. I think all you need is a charity number and that's it. And you're kind of off to a great start.
Oh, that's brilliant. And there's so many ideas in there. And like you said, there's kind of something that everyone could potentially do, even if it's outside of kind of what might meet the eye for, you know, when someone says, oh, I might do some volunteering. That's brilliant. And going back now to fostering as well. So I suppose you wanted... I know you covered an awful lot about the positives and negatives. So maybe just to bring people back a little bit again, you know, do we want to wrap up a little bit about the tough side of fostering and then move into some of the joyful moments and your lessons learned? And
yeah, for sure. So not every foster story has a successful outcome. Generally, a first-time foster won't be given a challenging dog, but sometimes we end up with dogs who are, well, I would maybe describe as incompatible with life. I'm particularly thinking about when I was fostering in Spain. Some of these feral dogs coming up could be 3 and 4 years old, and they have such innate learning done, or such challenging genetic issues around aggression or resource guarding or human aggression, human-directed aggression, that rescue centres make really tough decisions about behavioural euthanasia. Sometimes that's a reality, and hopefully most first-time foster families will never have to experience that. But it is part of the conversation that I think is really important just to have like at the back of your head. But there's other challenging issues with fostering, and sometimes it's heartbreaking. Like, it's hard. Sometimes you're up at night and your dog won't stop crying, and you're sitting there with your hands up beside the crate and you're trying to offer comfort, and the dog won't settle. It will not settle. It's so stressed and so distraught. That's part of it, and you kind of have to factor in sometimes, not all of the time, and most of the time this won't happen, but sometimes dogs are really distressed when they come to you and they're a little bit traumatized and they have a long road to recovery ahead of them, and rehabbing looks different for every single dog. Every single dog will have their own set of issues and their own history and their own problem behaviors, and they might be a problem for me but maybe not for you. So matching people to the problems is also a good thing. So as you get more experience in the foster world, you realize what you're good at. Maybe you're good at like feral dogs. You've got a hands-off approach and you've got time. I'm really good at high drive intensity dogs and sports dogs, and I like to engage and walk and be outside and play tug and be really physical with my dogs, where somebody else might be really talented with toy dogs. I find toy dogs really challenging, and some of my most difficult dogs have been really small dogs. The challenges vary from dog to dog, and there will be tears. There will be tears when you say, this is just, why can't I get you to stop pulling on the leash, or why are you so reactive? And there is help out there. So like connecting with other fosterers and behavioural experts really helps. So I'm so blessed that I have Claire Quinlan, who is snouting about Kerry as like the most spectacular foster support that has ever walked the face of the planet. And I've been able to touch base on various different things. So for example, we worked on a dog together called Toby, who was a Labrador who had just come in from a family, and the family had 4 small kids. And when Toby, he had seemingly a great life, but they couldn't stop him jumping up and biting. And he was nipping the kids and leaving bruises. And while they tried, they just couldn't get it to work out. So they tried all the traditional training techniques, maybe some more adversive things. And Toby kept escalating and escalating, and eventually they said, we can't do it anymore. I'm just done. You don't take the dog, we're going to euthanize the dog. And we said, right, we'll take the dog and see what we can do. And the first couple of days I was on my own with the dog, and I was like, oh my God, this dog is really hard. He was jumping off, he was catching my little bingo wings, and I was really struggling. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to exercise. So they were getting really... he was getting really escalated, and I couldn't bring him down.
No problem. We're all dog people here. It's all
good.
Good.
And as I got to know Toby, I was like, something's not right. So we called Claire and we decided to do a full assessment with her. So we came out to the house and saw how he was coping, and she said, oh, what strategies are you using? And I said, well, we're exercising, we're doing loads of engagement, we're doing as much training, I'm trying to do leash training. And she was like, whoa, girl, slow down. Yeah. And that was my first introduction to a decompression protocol. And she said, this dog has come from a situation with children. He is exhausted. Think about it. It's the summer holidays. And I said, what about the summer holidays, Claire? She's like, the kids are off. They just brought a puppy home and he hasn't slept in 3 whole months. And suddenly I was like, oh my God, that was the most obvious thing anyone could have told me. But it had created such a problem for me in my house and managing him in the way I usually manage dogs, that I had to change my approach completely. And I had to include loads of decompression, sniffy walks. I had to change my own body to like be more floppy and slow moving and things that I don't do naturally. And a lot of it was really challenging for me, and I found his behaviour really upsetting, and I felt like I wasn't a good foster home for him. But then he started to sleep, And then I started seeing these little more calm moments from when he'd wake up and he'd plod along beside me. And suddenly he wasn't jumping up and mouthing anymore. It was like his desperate communication at that time to say, I
Hmm.
am so tired and I need somebody to hear me.
Yeah.
And I needed a professional in that instance to show me, okay, I'm exhausted and this is what I need from you. So I was so lucky to have the guidance and the support from the foster network that was able to show me like some of these challenges. Like I was in tears. And that's the reality of it. Like I was so stressed because he was so stressed and I couldn't figure it out. And luckily, once he slept, and he had 6 weeks where he was out cold for most of the time. Once he started to sleep, and once his kind of cortisol had dropped down, he slept, and he did not stop sleeping for 6 whole weeks. And I would say he got 20 hours of sleep a day.
Wow.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
And he was a different dog, and he was happily rehomed as a very calm and relaxed dog. And when I checked in with the family a couple of months later, they're like, I can't believe that this description of this dog was the one that you gave me. Because I had highly energetic, highly aroused, this really motivated hiking dog that I had kind of thought I had in my head. And in reality, he was actually just really tired.
Yeah.
So the challenges sometimes aren't exactly what you think they are. And sometimes you need a little bit of help unpicking them. And it's okay to be wrong because we are just all trying to do our best. Not everybody's a professional, but there are people out there that can help us and want to help us pick those problems apart with our foster dogs. But we have to stick with our foster dogs to be able to do it in the first place. So a lot of people do give up when things get hard. And I think that's another part of that like community aspect that we were talking about, where people expect the easy, like quick reward system that we're used to now, with the online world.
Hmm.
Like, do a good thing happens to you in return, I get praise, situation's over. But the reality is, do the good thing comes to live in your home.
Yeah.
And it's not such a good thing anymore, and it's difficult. But if you stick it out, sometimes we get like the most amazing outcomes out of fostering. And finding the right home for your foster dog is a drug. It's like the best thing in the world, and there's nothing that could make you feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking back to like that challenging situation as well with Toby, um, he taught you a lifelong lesson about, cortisol and about, the need of sleep and,
Mhm.
decompression protocols, like with the conversation you have with Claire and everything. Like that's life learning, and not just
Mhm.
for your life with dogs, but presumably even, I learned so much from dogs that I can apply to my own life. And I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I was wondering as well, like, what would you like people to know about your experience of fostering, what all of your learnings along the way, and what should people maybe take away with them?
I think that the most important thing that I've learned from fostering is patience. And I'm not a patient person, but you can learn patience.
Hmm.
Patience with the rescue centres, patience with the dogs, and patience with yourself.
Hmm.
Everybody in life deserves a certain level of grace and understanding, and rescue dogs most of all. They're not coming ready made, and we don't come ready made. And it's like a really interesting combination of like social problems you're solving, animal behavioral problems that you're solving, and community issues that you're trying to like weave together to create like the positive outcome of an adoption. And it's not simple, and it's not supposed to be simple. And there isn't a black and white answer. And accepting that there is no perfect reality and that there is no perfect um, situation that you can force sometimes leads to very near perfect adoptions. And
Hmm.
you find matches for dogs that are out of this world incredible. And giving chances to people to connect with the animals that you love and that you're fostering creates lifelong friendships for everybody around you. And yeah, it's a really special experience to be a foster home and to connect with a rescue and to be able to support them however you can, whether that's through volunteering, donating, or just educating the people in your life to say, oh yeah, up there in Tipperary there is a rescue centre. sometimes that's all you kind of need to know at the back of your life, and that one day that will be a useful piece of information. Fostering for me has created like a whole community of dog lovers that are now my best friends.
Mhm.
And I'm really grateful that I got into it, because it's changed the trajectory of my life and the way I treat other people. I think I'm a kinder person and a softer person and a more understanding person because of it.
So inspiring. And what's coming next? You know, you set yourself a huge goal. What's coming next for you in rescue?
What's coming next? Oh, I never know what's coming next. I exceeded my 30 dogs in my 30th year by
Double.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm going to continue on fostering and maybe transition into more difficult dogs. So maybe more aggressive dogs, and try some more behavioral rehabilitation. I'm educating myself all the time. So I've
Mhm.
just finished with my Creedon's Dog College course, and I'm
Brilliant.
going to continue on doing more behaviour courses. The School of Canine Science is next on my list. And yeah, I'm going down the behaviour route, and hopefully I'll be able to provide advice for people who are fostering, or people who are thinking about surrendering their dogs, but maybe want to get advice on how to retain their dog in their family and change their management of their dogs. Everybody's got a different role to play in this, and I think my one will be helping people keep their difficult dogs, and enjoy how to enjoy your dog. I think sometimes all you need is a little bit of advice to learn how to enjoy your dog in a different way that you maybe never got to see growing up. And yeah, I think that's where Thoughtful Pause is going next.
Oh, amazing. And that's such a lovely note to end it on, because I think sometimes people forget that that's why we have dogs in the first place, is to have a bit of crack together and like find a way to live our lives together. So amazing. You're an absolute inspiration. Thank you so much for coming on. You definitely changed my mind on a couple of things, and opened my mind to another couple of things. I'm definitely going to have a second look at the black dogs now.
Oh, brilliant.
Anytime
Hope
you've
that
opened my eyes.
will suit you just fine.
Absolutely. Thanks a million for coming on and sharing. It's been an
You're so
absolute
welcome.
pleasure, and we appreciate it so much.
Great,
Thanks a
thanks.
million, and I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And once again, a huge thank you to Eileen for coming on and sharing such inspiring stories with us. And I think it's so important to hear the realities from, behind what's going on. I think sometimes we all think that we're very clued in, and we do get pieces of information here and there, but it's so great to have someone sit down and explain in detail, what's really involved with what they do. And that has definitely been the case for me and the situation and around fostering. I think I've learned so much from this conversation. So once again, a huge thank you. Of course, we have promised a number of links during that conversation, including those to the Haven Rescue. So those will be in the show notes. We have also started our very own rescue of the month, as Eileen has suggested during the conversation. So since that recording, we have already started that, and that was something that just after that chat, once we stopped recording, I told Eileen that we were going to do, and we started off with a black dog that will that was also mentioned in the episode. So check out our social media pages. We'll be posting dogs now and then, just to get their faces and their names out there a bit more, and hopefully to find them their forever homes very soon. So thank you all as well for listening in. This episode, as much as any of the others, potentially more than the others, could really help some dogs. So if you think this would be interesting for one of your friends, one of your families, anyone that in your community that might be interested or might be inspired, at least by knowing what the whole fostering process looks like, please do share it out. It really does help this podcast grow in audience and get really good messages out there from our speakers as well. So thank you very much for listening in. You're an amazing audience and you're so appreciated. Have a lovely week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with yet another podcast episode.